Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely fascinating. Over the next 15 minutes or so, we're doing a complete walkthrough of the core concepts from Book 1, Version 3 of a massive architectural manual. But here's the twist. This isn't a manual designed for building massive data centers or coding software platforms. No, this one is actually designed for human and organizational excellence. It's called the GIDAF Framework. Think of it as a masterclass in how to architect a vision-powered life. So get ready, because we're going to explore exactly how to apply these rigorous design principles deeply into our daily individual lives and broadly across corporate life.
Let's hit the ground running with a quote straight from the source material that really sets the stage for us. Quote, "What you see is what you write, and what you document and put into action is what you eventually become." End quote. That pretty much hits the nail on the head regarding our focus today. We're not just talking about vague, feel-good motivational ideas of, having a vision. We are squarely focused on the real power of structured vision. We're talking about vision as a documented, actionable architecture that literally builds your future.
Now, you might be wondering, why on earth do we even need an architecture for our lives? Well, the author points to a very specific and honestly a very painful problem. Let's call it the pinnacle plateau. We've all seen this, right? It's the burnt-out executive whose personal life completely falls apart the exact same day they make CEO. Or it's that legacy generational company that just suddenly goes bankrupt overnight because they completely stopped innovating. They reach the absolute top, massive success, but then they totally lose control right there at the pinnacle. And the root cause? It's a steep decline that happens the moment sustaining principles are abandoned. Basically, when the internal architecture breaks down, the external success just crumbles.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we just covered the pinnacle plateau. Next, we'll enter the GIDAF framework. Then we'll look at the 5 buckets of light, followed by your personal life base, the corporate blueprint, and finally, we'll wrap up with translighting. Let's dive in.
Okay, Section 1. Enter the GIDAF framework. Let's transition right into the solution here and look at the overarching system that acts as the ultimate antidote to this plateau.
So what is it? Well, GDF literally stands for Global Insights for Designing Advanced Fronts. I absolutely love this definition because it sounds like military terminology, and, well, that's because it kind of is. Think about it. An advancing front is a position that is simultaneously held and pushed forward. You can't just sustain an advancing front by accident, right? It requires unending envisioning and just a fierce, disciplined commitment to continuous improvement. GDAF is that vision-powered lifecycle framework. It's designed to keep your momentum from ever collapsing.
To really put this into perspective, let's compare it to something you might already know. If you're in the tech world, you've probably heard of TOGAF. And hey, if you haven't, count yourself lucky. It's a massive, complex enterprise IT architecture framework. The author of our source material, who is actually an IT solution architect himself, makes a brilliant distinction here. While TOGAF is laser-focused on building servers and enterprise software, GIDAF focuses entirely on people and processes. TOGAF is all about asking, how do we build the enterprise? But GIDAF flips it and asks, how do we build the person who runs the enterprise? They're two sides of the same coin. One was developed in a boardroom for technology, while the other was given as an inspired methodology for human life. Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 buckets of light. Let's zoom out from the atomic details for a second to see how this incredible 15-phase framework comes together into a beautiful macro-level structure. Basically, the entire 15-phase cycle collapses into 5 broad, hyper-converged standpoints. Let's think of them as buckets of light. First up is prevision, which is all about your foundational identity and design. Then there's hypervision, which handles the strategic planning and mapping of your unique gifts. Next is active vision. That's your execution engine where the real work happens. Then provision, which is your central resourcing hub. And finally, postvision, handling legacy and inheritance. And the beauty of this is that when you dip into one of these buckets, you're actually capturing goodness from all the others simultaneously. It is all deeply connected. Here's the really crucial takeaway, though. It's how these sections actually relate to one another. Sections 1, 2, and 5 make up what the author calls the being vision. That's who you are and the ultimate legacy you leave behind. Meanwhile, Section 3 is the doing vision, the literal execution, the management, the daily grind. Notice that the being vision absolutely must precede the doing vision. Why? Well, because no volume of frantic activity can ever compensate for an unresolved identity. Seriously, if you don't know who you are, running faster won't help you at all. You are just going to arrive at the completely wrong destination much sooner. All right, Section 3, your personal life base.
Let's pivot slightly to the individual track of this dual framework to see how you can actually use this in your daily life for things like family finances, career choices, and personal growth.
It all starts with really understanding your life base. The source material leans into this fantastic IT to human metaphor here. Imagine your life as a massive, complex database. It's a totally unique, completely non-replicable repository of all your past experiences, your knowledge, your gifts, and your potential. And, just like a computer system, it's strictly governed by input, process, and output logic. The raw data is already in there, the good, the bad, and the really ugly. The difference in the actual output of your life depends entirely on the quality of the scripts you're running. If your daily internal script is, "I am terrible with money," well, your output is going to be debt. Even if your life base technically holds the intelligence to budget, changing the script literally changes what you fetch from your own potential.
Which actually brings me to a question I want to ask you directly, right now. Are you operating with a liability mindset or a how can I help mentality? The text astutely points out that a lot of people take up jobs or honestly even approach their personal relationships constantly asking, what can I grab fast and leave? That right there is a liability mindset. The GIDAF framework violently pushes us into the other's vision, where true leaders actively indulge in a how can I help mentality. The more you ask how you can genuinely help, the more your internal systems naturally reach out to produce excellent, deeply people-oriented results.
That brings us to Section 4, Corporate Blueprint and Feed Forward. Let's shift gears again to examine how corporate leaders and management teams can leverage GIDF for massive organizational change and high performance.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is this concept called feed forward. We all know about feedback, right? Every company uses it. But feedback is anchored entirely in the past. It just evaluates concluded events retrospectively. Feed forward completely flips the script. It is an extrapolated, proactive mechanism that looks at the current direction and magnitude of a process and literally predicts if it's going to succeed or fail before it happens. It's like proactive intrusion prevention. Instead of doing a depressing post-mortem review after a project completely tanks, feed forward is like a software algorithm warning a project manager today that their current coding speeds mean they will miss the deadline next month, allowing them to pivot immediately.
To enable that level of proactive management, GIDAF employs what IT professionals call a spine leaf architecture. In this setup, the central provision phase acts as the spine of the network. It connects directly to every single other phase, which are the leaves, simultaneously. There are no clunky, bottleneck middle layers here. In practical corporate terms, this means your marketing team, a leaf, doesn't have to wait for 3 tedious levels of middle management to get budget approval from the center spine. They draw resources directly, which allows for just incredible agility and operational excellence.
But what happens when an entire organization needs to pivot? For that, GIDAF offers the waters to wines methodology. Think of this as the ultimate live migration strategy for change management. Step 1. Recognize the antiquity. You have to openly admit the old way is outdated. Step 2. Drain the waters. This is absolutely crucial. You must intentionally release and completely deplete the old systems before you can install the new ones. Step 3. Receive the new wine. And finally, Step 4. Sustain it. It's a beautifully structured way to manage massive systemic transformation without having to entirely shut down the business. Because let's face it, you can't just close up shop for 6 months to figure yourselves out.
Finally, Section 5, Translating to Uncommon Value. Let's bring both the individual and the corporate tracks together for the grand climax of the entire GIDAF framework. And that ultimate climax is a concept called translating. Translating is the intentional, deliberate movement of a person, a team, or a whole organization to a much higher pedestal of excellence through the sustained, unbroken supply of vision and action. The source material makes a really powerful distinction here. When you are translated, you essentially become light-formed. You aren't just translated or relocated to a slightly better job or a new market segment. No, you're fundamentally changed in content from the inside out.
This naturally brings us to the light protocol, which strictly dictates how this newly discovered value and excellence must be handled. When light, whether that's value or wealth or success, strikes you, 3 things must happen. First, you reflect it, meaning you redirect the praise back to the source. Second, you absorb it. You internalize it so you can actually enjoy your life abundantly. But third, and most importantly, you deflect it. You must intentionally pass any unused light to others. True value has to be shared and deflected out into your community and your marketplace. It can never, ever be hoarded.
And I want to share a statistic from this architectural manual that absolutely blew my mind.
The author emphasizes that 80%, yes, 80% of our value pack is already enclosed right within us. Think about that for a second. You don't need to scour the earth or spend a fortune trying to find what you need to succeed. 80% of it is already sitting right there in your life base, just waiting for your own internal spark of fire to ignite it into action. So I leave you with this final provocative thought. If 80% of your value is already inside you, just waiting to be processed through the GIDAF cycle of clear vision, disciplined action, and feed-forward improvement, what is your uncommon value to the marketplace? What is that unique, totally differentiated value that only you can deflect out into the world? The architecture is right there. The blueprint is ready and waiting. It's time for you to start your own envisioning process. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.